My obsession around startups is really using technology to empower people to be more creative. I believe that everyone has a story to tell so long as they have tools that are easy enough and accessible to them. And I think video is obviously one of the most challenging formats.
Welcome to Building with AI, a show where we host conversations with world-class business leaders in AI to uncover advice that helps you build and scale better AI products. I'm your host, Haroon Choudery. Today, I'm joined by Champ Bennett, co-founder and CEO at Capsule. Capsule is building an AI-powered video editor for content and marketing teams. During our conversation, Champ discusses story leading up to Capsule, how Capsule uses AI today, the future of AI at Capsule, and much, much more. Before we dig in, a quick word from our sponsor.
Today's episode is brought to you by Autoblocks, the AI optimization platform product teams use to create world-class AI experiences. So, you just launched V0 of your AI feature or product. What's next? Autoblocks unlocks an intuitive yet powerful optimization workflow that helps you continuously understand, improve, differentiate your AI-powered products. Understand how your users interact with your product by connecting user activity to what's happening under the hood of your application. Improve your product thoughtfully and iteratively. Integrate testing of your AI products into your CI workflow and run A/B tests to see what changes are driving great user outcomes. Differentiate your AI products with powerful fine-tuning workflow that lets you turn product usage data into training data. Get started with Autoblocks for free at autoblocks.ai. Now, back to the episode. Awesome, Champ. Welcome to the show. Super excited to chat with you. To kick off, can you give a quick introduction to yourself and how you landed on the idea for Capsule and where you're at today?
Yeah, absolutely. And thanks for inviting me on. I've been in technology and startups for close to 20 years now. Beginning in part of my career, I was an engineer, mostly working on the front end of the stack, JavaScript, CSS, HTML, things of that nature, but always had more of a creative slant to my work. Prior to getting into technology, I was a musician, wanted to study as a graphic designer before I got into coding. First half of my career mostly spent in working at agencies in New York City, building products for companies like Google, Microsoft. We worked on Vivo.com for a while, SesameStreet.com, a lot of kind of like early media companies back in the days when everyone was just taking massive amounts of video and moving it onto the internet for the very first time. So I got a lot of experience in like video streaming and building great products for the web in the early part of my career. And then last 10 years or so have been as a startup founder. So Capsule's the third video startup that I've worked on. My obsession around startups is really using technology to empower people to be more creative. And I believe that everyone has a story to tell. Everyone can tell that story so long as they have tools that are easy enough and accessible to them. And I think video is one of the most challenging formats for folks to work on. And so was really excited to dive in when we started Capsule 3 years ago on working on that problem.
Awesome. And I'm super excited to dig into that a little bit more. I'm very bullish on video content as a form of content to share on social media and other distribution channels, just because we're seeing so much proliferation of AI generated written content nowadays and
Yes.
videos. That's what led you to Capsule. So where are you at now? What's the current state of the union over at Capsule?
Yeah, I'll give you the quick backstory. It's a long one, so I'll give you the short version. But we actually started Capsule close to 3 years ago. So we raised our first round in January of 21. And the thesis was generally there was so much behavior change over the last decade when it comes to consumer video. So everything moving to short form, vertical, creation was being decentralized in the sense that most of the content we were consuming wasn't coming from large media companies, but increasingly it was coming from individuals. And our thesis was that business communication would eventually follow that trend. And that was basically it. We didn't know much else other than that was the idea. So the first tool that we built was a UGC video tool for marketers, in particular enterprise teams who generally struggle more with video, and I'll talk about a little bit why that is in a bit. But we put that product out to the market as an MVP, did very well with it. And the more we talked to customers, the more we understood that there was a really big opportunity to build a video tool that was really purpose built for enterprise teams. Typically that looks like marketing and content teams, but then there's also communications teams, there's PR, there's HR even has some use cases around video, customer success, sales. Increasingly, video is becoming the predominant way that businesses communicate both internally and externally. And there just wasn't a great tool that serviced that need. And in some ways, that was a surprise to me too. We interviewed hundreds, over 300 enterprise content and marketing teams, and just discovered that there wasn't a very good tool. There was a big hole in the market for them. And so we went and we built that product, and that is the thing that we launched just a couple of weeks ago. So been a long journey to build, and there's a lot of challenges around building a video editing tool in the browser that really feels native. A lot of technical hurdles to go through, many of which we weren't sure that we could actually achieve, to be totally honest with you. I'd say one of the biggest risks in Capsule in the early days was just the product risk. Could we build a world-class video editing tool that was default in the browser? And similar to Figma in the early days, their big risk was, could they build a world-class design tool in the browser? And I think we've done that. We've eliminated probably like 90-something% of what I thought was the big product risk. And now it's really all about go-to-market and sales and growth.
Amazing. And in terms of the product risk, was there a specific component that especially stood out to you as the white whale?
Yeah, absolutely. The big challenge trade-off within the browser and video as it relates to video is performance versus capability. Rendering video in the client is pretty decent for performance, right? So it's local and you do all the processing on the person's computer. And increasingly there are web APIs to enable this, WebGPU being one of them. And there's a lot of really interesting things coming down the pipe in terms of web standards as it relates to client-side video rendering. But generally, capabilities-wise, it's really hard to create great looking video that is rendered on the client. We went out and we spoke to customers. Great looking was one of the really important attributes that they wanted. Because you can go on the App Store and you can download TikTok or CapCut or whatever, and you can make reasonably good stuff that's fun and for your friends and family. Similarly, you could do that with iMovie if you wanted to. But if you're like a large business, let's say you're Google, right? Then brand really starts to matter. The way the graphics look really starts to matter. And what we found very quickly is that the browser, at least as it is today, just wasn't capable of that. So the big challenge was, how do we make a video editing tool that's in the browser and feels native? It feels like a desktop experience. And I could probably talk about that for hours, but that was the big hurdle. And yeah, that was the thing that I was like, I'm just not sure we can do this. And it took a lot of tries and it took a lot of missteps and let's take a step back to take 2 steps forward over and over again. And we finally came down to it. I think we're pretty close to sub 100 millisecond latency, and all the rendering happens on GPUs in the cloud. And it works incredibly well. It feels very native, and that's only going to get better. We've only just scratched the surface of that.
And before we dive into some more of the components of the technical stack and how you think through building the product, I'm curious why you landed on the B2B orientation. I know there's much more of a need for a solution like yours in the B2B market. The market is full of tools for B2C video editing and whatnot, yes. But I haven't seen a positioning exactly like yours.
Yeah, it's a great observation. The market for video tools is almost oversaturated, certainly on the consumer side. You can go to the App Store, you can download hundreds of free video apps, and some of them are very good. But then on the other side of the market, you have creative tools that are built for creative professionals, right? So think of the Adobe Creative Suite or DaVinci Resolve, things like Final Cut Pro or After Effects, right? Which is probably one of the most complex pieces of software ever created in terms of user experience. Now, the challenge is if you go and you talk to anybody that works at a large organization, they're going to tell you they can't use either one of those tools, at least not them directly. And the reason is the consumer tools are too like consumery in the sense that they don't have the ability to create professional looking graphics. They don't have the ability to collaborate as a team. And they certainly don't have the ability to run in the browser, right? Because it's siloed into your phone. So it's default hard to collaborate. And then if you ask them about the creative suite and the sort of more professional tier of tools, they're like, I've tried opening that up before and I have no clue what's going on. Okay, so this was the moment when we really discovered that there was this really large, in my opinion, opportunity to serve that particular user, the business user, particularly a large enterprise company. It wasn't just video editors that wanted a tool like this. It was all kinds of people within the organization, from marketing to sales to success to content, et cetera. The list went on and on. It's like, wow, okay, we need to just build that tool. Now, the second thing that's really great about it is the pain point is enormously high. The willingness to pay is also very high, unlike that of consumer tools. So if you look at sort of consumer tools, they're either free or they're priced very cheaply, maybe a couple bucks a year, a couple bucks a month. And even on the professional side, looking at 40 bucks a month per seat. On the enterprise side that we've discovered, price point is going to be higher. And it's because the pain point is much higher and the ROI is still enormous, right? Because the alternative is we're going to go hire an agency, or we're just going to go hire more and more full-time video editors, which are not cheap and also in high demand. And so you go and you offer the solution and you say it's X number of dollars a year. And they're like, that's it. But that price is significantly more than what you would expect to pay as like a creative professional or a consumer. It's like the market opportunity, plus it felt like a really great business model.
Makes complete sense. And from my perspective, as we're launching Building with AI, we're thinking a lot about this as well. When we think about what is an MVP for this show, the bar is just a lot higher nowadays, right?
Yeah.
It's not like we can stitch something together using an iPhone app, at least any iPhone app that I've used, and then publish it on YouTube and feel like we actually gave it a real go. I don't know if it would check off like the viable part of the MVP acronym. And so a tool like yours raising the bar for shipping quality content at a fast cadence, it's very appealing.
Love to hear that. And yeah, that's actually probably the biggest learning from the launch was how many even smaller teams were interested in a product like this. Like a lot of founders reached out at like early stage startups, a lot of 1 and 2 person marketing teams who are like, we just can't make video fast enough. So increasingly, I think that's an area that we'll continue to focus on. But right now, more so focused on onboarding larger teams for whom the pain point of creating consistently and collaboratively is just enormously high. Like they just can't use the other tools.
So Capsule has a strong orientation around AI. You mentioned that in your social content. I know in your demos, you have specific capabilities like AI generated copy that you can add into your video. Was AI always a part of the game plan 3 years ago? Or was that something that maybe emerged down the road in the age of ChatGPT?
More so the latter. And I've seen a number of startups who started around the same time as us, and they built a lot of really hard technology. And then they integrated AI into that, and suddenly they have something truly magical. I guess the journey for us started probably like it did for most, playing with early versions of GPT, thinking, hey, maybe there's something here. And then GPT 3 and 4 and DALL-E and Stable Diffusion, and it was like, okay, this is real now. Let's get on the train and let's do it very quickly. And so we were one of the earliest video companies to release a demo that integrated Stable Diffusion and GPT-4 into a video product. And that went viral. It was like our first thing that we put out back at almost a year ago, December of 2022. And it went viral on Twitter. And that really gave us a lot of conviction that like, hey, this vision that we had around democratizing video within organizations is going to be accelerated even faster by AI. And that just got us super excited. And I don't even think it's interesting because we went off and we were like, let's do AI this, let's do AI that. And then what we realized is actually, let's just build the greatest tool that we can. And then let's figure out where AI just fits in naturally. And so we pulled some of it back, and now we're leaning into it again as the tool has become more robust. One of our philosophies is that like anything that an AI does for you, you ought to be able to go there and massage it. And so we build the tool first, and then we figure out how AI can accelerate the adoption of that tool.
So generally speaking, when you're making decisions as to explore AI capabilities in a specific part of your product, what's your general framework for thinking about where it might make most sense?
In video, it's anything that is tedious or maybe previously was only done by professionals. And we think about the 80-20 rule, which I think a lot of, at least on the creative side, people are starting to think about, which is like 80% of the work can be done by an AI, but everything needs a human touch. And so again, we think about, all right, so AI can automate this part, but how do you go in and very easily massage that into something that feels really naturally human? I'm not super bullish on the idea of video avatars of ourselves being the future of communication. I think there's definitely use cases for that. I'm always going to be on camera. I imagine you're always going to be on camera. And people are probably going to be able to figure out that it's not us. Now, I've seen a lot of really interesting stuff lately around translation and how do you extend yourself in terms of the audience. Like HeyGen and then Spotify just released their version of that with OpenAI, where they're automatically translating podcasts into other languages, which I think is brilliant. And so I love this idea of using AI to amplify a human rather than replace it. And so that's really our product philosophy throughout Capsule, is like, how do we make video 10 times easier for people who've never done it before, and then 10 times faster for people who have.
To take a step back, what are the different ways that AI is used in Capsule today? And what's on the near-term roadmap in terms of ways that you're going to incorporate AI into the product?
There's over a dozen different models within the product. The whole interface is driven by AI, right? So we use speech recognition to transcribe all the videos that you upload. Then we turn that transcript into an editing interface. So that in and of itself is powered by a handful of models. And then we use GPT-4 to help you create titles for your videos in an automated way. So you can add a title and it'll infer what the tone of the video is, and it will suggest a title to you that fits really nicely within the constraints of that particular graphic. So that's one thing that's really, it's not like we're just going and pulling random bits of strings from GPT-4. We really tune it so that what comes back feels really natural in terms of the tone, feels really natural in terms of the aesthetic, and tries to get you to move very quickly through an edit. Where else? We use AI in some of the audio recording stuff that's forthcoming, some of the really exciting stuff that we're doing around video tracking and automatically resizing videos from landscape to portrait and a variety of different other aspect ratios. So there's a lot of stuff coming down the pipe there. But increasingly, yeah, we're just looking at the models that feel like they could really automate some of the more tedious aspects of video and bring more people into the format.
There's just so much friction throughout multiple parts of the process, whether it be recording, whether it be editing, collaboration, all the way through to distribution. So super excited to hear that you're helping out with all of that. What's your process for making it work for your particular use case in a way that seems very tailored to Capsule and eliminates things like non-relevant results?
We do a lot in terms of prompt engineering. And so we spend a lot of time tuning prompts in order to get the results that we want. And I think over time, there's definitely an opportunity to start to fine tune those results. I'm so interested to see where these models go, right? Because it's changing every single day. And so much of it depends on the data set of the models and who's building these and what the purpose of them is for. We're really dynamic about this stuff. We swap models in and out all the time and really just try to get the best model for that particular use case in front of our customers as soon as we possibly can. For example, we've been using Stability XL for AI B-roll generation. Really cool feature where you can select some of your transcript where you might want to layer in B-roll, which is like adding in an image or a video in on top of your kind of primary footage. So imagine if I was talking about supercars right now and we want to fly in a Lambo or whatever. We use AI to help folks generate that so that they don't have to go use stock or go source something. We can swap those models in and out whenever we want to. And so when I see the announcement of DALL-E 3, which looks brilliant, Getty Images just released a model, which also looks brilliant. We're really going to prioritize the stuff that just services the customer the best.
So when you're implementing your AI, when you're making it work as well as possible for Capsule, what are some of the friction points? What are some of the things that the AI just doesn't work so well out of the box and you may need to do a little bit more massaging? And what are things that may require a little bit less massaging?
I think testing is still pretty hard, and maybe there's some really novel solutions to this that you know about. And certainly my CTO would have much better answers to these questions than I would. And so users all have different experiences. In some ways, that's really powerful. And in other ways, it's really frustrating as a product maker because you just don't know what the user is going to get. And therefore, you can't really design a perfect solution around it always or in every scenario. So that's one of the challenges. And that's why I think it's so important that no matter what the AI creates on your behalf, you always have to give a way for you to go in and massage it. And again, that's why we think about the tool from the perspective of build the great product first, and then layer in almost like this other human who's helping you do it. In fact, we actually have a name for it. We call it the co-producer, right? So everybody's got co-pilots. Capsule's your co-producer. It's like the person that's sitting next to you, suggesting where and when to add design components, suggesting how long your video should be, suggesting how you might want to cut it up for certain platforms. Maybe one way you want to do 30 seconds for TikTok, you might want to do 60 seconds for Reels. And it just very quickly helps you move through that, but it never says, here's the canonical thing, here's the suggestion, and then we can be a super easy interface to go and massage that suggestion.
I think you put it really nicely where you mentioned something along the lines of the AI is meant to personalize user experience, right? Give users that last mile experience where they're each getting custom results or outputs or whatever it might be, depending on their own nuances and the things that they're looking for. It's very useful in serving that function. And the power of AI is in its creativity. But of course, the flip side of that coin is that the creativity may go unhinged.
And that's another thing that we think about is over time, as you use a product, you can start to learn from your behaviors. You can start to learn your taste. I'm sure that at some point we're all going to have like an AI profile that we use in our different use cases and workflows throughout our daily lives, throughout our work lives. I'm sure that's coming. Like one of the most frustrating things about ChatGPT in my mind is that every time I go in there, I have to give it so much context. And in some ways that's true of Capsule too. So how do we start to capture that context, save it to your profile, build an identity for you, and then really personalize your experience over time is an area that we're really focused on.
Really well said. So I'm curious to do a quick exercise with you if you'll indulge. So you're describing this world where the AI is giving each user this hyper-personalized experience. Now, in the context of Capsule, assuming that the AI is working exactly like you want it to, let's say a year from now, what does the experience look like? What are the things in the product that are going to exist as you continue down your roadmap that will be facilitated using AI that you would describe as a concept for the way that AI would most optimally fit into the Capsule workflow?
Just think about improved suggestions, right? So if we go back to the model of Capsule's goal is to get you 80% of the way there, how do we increase that number incrementally over time as you use the product? So that maybe at some point it gets to 90%, maybe at some point it gets to 95%. And then you're doing less and less because the human part is coming from you. It's no longer the AI. It's coming from your own behaviors. And I think that's where things get really interesting. Maybe like trivial example of that. Within a business context, there are all these requirements around branding, how things should be talked about, how they should be positioned visually, aesthetically. And Capsule as a product isn't super aware of those things right off the bat. We have some ideas on how to fix that coming down the road, but it's not super aware, right? You log in, it's maybe we know your email address and your name and some things that we asked you on the onboarding process. So we have a very vague sense of your persona and the company that you work for. Now, over time, you start to make video and maybe you start to add like a particular intro to your video over and over again. Okay, looks like this person likes this intro. Looks like they like this color. It looks like they talk about their product in a very particular way. And that particular way, these things can be learned. They can build a profile. They can create context for the AI that just improves the suggestions over time. And so suddenly now you're opening up your video, your new project, for example, and it starts to give you those suggestions much more quickly than it did before, or in a way that's just far more accurate than it ever was before.
That sounds like a great world to me. I'm genuinely really excited about what y'all are working on. As I mentioned, it's extremely bullish on video content in the world of B2B. I think it's something that's been definitely underserved for us. We've felt the pain ourselves, and seeing a solution like yours is like a breath of fresh air.
I was just reading this article the other day on Hacker News about the history of presentation software and how it started as printing out slides and putting them on a transparent thing. And suddenly that PowerPoint became a thing, and it wasn't that hard to use. And the everyday person within a company could start to tell stories through slides. And video has this just incredibly high entry point. My background, I didn't really talk much about this, but I spent a lot of time building consumer products in the photo and video space, mostly for the App Store. And all that is about like, how do you just create an elegant interface for people to achieve outsized results that they couldn't do before without your technology? So just applying those same learnings of consumer creative tools into the business world, it's really going to unlock what I hear like time and time again, which is we just cannot make enough video in our company. We don't have enough people. We don't have enough expertise. The software is too hard.
Now, for those that might be listening who are not yet sold on the power of video in B2B, do you have any opinions to share or thoughts to share on why B2B startups, larger companies should all focus on video and maybe spend some resources on creating video content?
I could talk about this all day. I think the easiest thing to ask yourself is what is most effective in the world of consumer media right now? Because at the end of the day, we're all consumers. We're all spending a ton of time on our phones. And where are we all spending that time? Watching videos. I think it's some sickening number, like 3 to 4 hours a day, right? So if that's the behavior that we all have at home, it's very likely going to be the behavior that we all have at work soon enough. And there's a lot of precedent for this. B2B tends to lag consumer behaviors by 5 to 10 years. WhatsApp and iMessage preceded Slack, right? So those things that happened 5-10 years before Slack happened. FaceTime and Skype preceded Zoom and Meets by about 5 to 10 years. So really good way to think about what are the opportunities in B2B is to think about what are the behavior shifts that are happening in consumer that will eventually find their way into enterprise. And video is just like, for me, the most obvious one. And by the way, like we've built our business this way too. Every good thing that's ever happened to Capsule is a result of a video. So we practice what we preach. We don't do a lot of blog content, but we put a lot of videos on YouTube. We put a lot of videos on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and it's done incredibly well for us. So our goal is to just kind of take that same playbook and make it easy for any business to do it.
So you mentioned that you're doing a lot of prompting right now. What's your process for identifying which prompts work better or what don't? Is it more of a making the judgment yourself, or are you using some explicit feedback from users?
Yeah, so we have some explicit and implicit feedback loops. We're not at a critical mass yet where those loops are actually statistically significant, I would say. But over time, certainly they will be. So a lot of what we do right now is just we go in manually and look at the results, and we tune things based on the inputs that we see generated or the outputs that we see generated. And so it's a fairly manual process now, but over time, we'll continue to actually get humans to give us that feedback, users, I should say, give us that feedback, and then use that information to automatically tune the product. In the beginning, I was like, oh, we need to go hire an ML team and we need to start making our own models. And then very quickly it was like, that's not going to work because who are we competing against in that space? And then it was like, oh, now we need to do fine tuning. And it was like, oh, wait, prompts are actually very good at this and we can just provide context. And I think we're still looking for a use case where fine tuning is going to be really important. I do think that over time, as we collect more data, that opportunity will present itself a little bit better than it has so far. But so far, yeah, prompts really do the job for us.
That completely makes sense. Last thing I wanted to ask you, is there any notable use case or story from a Capsule user that really stands out to you and that you like to share?
I will say that maybe one of the most rewarding things about building creative tools is seeing content randomly on your feed that was created with your product. And we've started to see a lot of that over the last couple of weeks. Again, we've only been live for a couple of weeks now. So that's been really fun. And something that I've seen as a signal in other creative tools that I've built in the past is when you start to see users doing things with your product that you couldn't even have imagined, that's when you know you're really onto something. And so we started to see that, and that's just super exciting. I can't talk too much about the current users. Most of our, again, because we're going after enterprise, most of the people that are using the product now, we can't really talk publicly about, but there's some really large, some of which are publicly traded companies who are getting into Capsule and really finding that it solves a need for them within their video teams, within their marketing teams, within their content teams, within their comms teams. And so that's just been incredibly validating and exciting. We just can't wait to see what the next 6 months looks like.
Love to hear that. All right, Champ, I want to end by giving you the opportunity to share where people can find Capsule, any exciting updates, or anything really that you want to share with our audience to close off the episode.
Cool. Yeah, I'll just do a shameless plug. If you are on a content or marketing team or any one of the teams that I just mentioned and you're struggling to create video, perhaps you're outsourcing that video, perhaps you're trying to figure out how to scale a team and you just want to start doing video on your own, Capsule is a really amazing tool for that. Check out capsule.video. Still in public beta now. We've been private beta for the last 3 months or so, but just now in public beta. And we're really just looking for feedback at this point. Product is free for business users. Got to sign up with a business email. But we're just looking for feedback. And so please reach out to me directly. I'm on Twitter. You can also email me at champ@capsule.video. Welcome your feedback and excited to build the things that you ask us to build.
Awesome. That's capsule.video. We're definitely very excited to try it out. And we'll definitely be very vocal with feedback as well.
I love it.
Really pumped about what y'all are working on. So thanks for joining, Champ. Really appreciate it.
Cool, man. Thanks for inviting me on.